They wanted to turn her life into a before and after circus, without her knowing. And why? Simply because she was a fat woman. Denise Carter overheard the plan by chance. And the next morning the cameras were arriving. Don't make a sound. Not even a breath. Denise Carter froze when the pantry door was pulled inward and darkness swallowed half her body. A strip of hallway light leaked through a crack, thin as a blade. The smell of expensive fabric softener, damp cloth and industrial lemon rose off the cleaning shelf. But what truly filled Denise's chest was something else. The sudden certainty that in this house silence wasn't manners. It was survival. Footsteps crossed the main kitchen. 2 voices. A short, practiced laugh. Too pretty to be real. Denise pressed her hands against her apron to keep them from shaking. She'd heard Candace Whitaker laugh like that for guests, for neighbors, for the women at the club. The same laugh that made people relax. But here, with no audience, it carried a metallic edge. "I don't want drama, Clayton," Candace said, low and controlled. "I want results." The other voice answered calmly, like he was talking about inventory, not a person. "She'll agree. She needs the job." Denise knew that voice too. Clayton. The owner of the house. The man who smiled at donors at charity events and shook hands as if every handshake were a contract. The man who 2 weeks earlier had said "Good morning, Denise," while looking over her shoulder. Like, Denise was the name of a function, not a person. The pantry was narrow, and Denise kept her shoulder pressed against cans arranged by size. Every instinct told her to run, to swing the door open and pretend she hadn't heard a thing. But the click of Candace's heel on the floor, and a pause in the hallway, pinned Denise in place. "Did you talk to that consultant?" Candace asked. "Yes. She'll be here tomorrow morning." "Good." Candace exhaled, satisfied. "I want the before filmed in the kitchen. Natural. Authentic. Her eating, her cleaning, her being her. No makeup. No flattering angles. And then we do the rest." Denise didn't understand at first. Her body reacted before her brain. Her stomach dropped, her mouth went dry. Clayton said something that turned her blood to ice. "The contract is ready. She signs after we film." Candace laughed again, this time with no charm at all. "People sign once they're already exposed. Then they sign to fix what the world saw. That's how it works." The sliver of light quivered as someone passed too close to the door. Denise held her breath so hard she could hear her heart beating inside her ears. She didn't need to see Clayton's face to picture it. That calm of a man used to giving orders without raising his voice. "And if she refuses?" he asked, almost out of procedure. Candace answered the way someone talks about a bad purchase. "Then we replace her. But she's perfect. 50. Big body. A face that looks like truth. She's the kind of before that makes people feel guilty. And guilt sells." Denise didn't move. Didn't blink. In that instant everything that had felt off these past few weeks lined up, cruel and clear. The new cameras installed in the hallway, for security. The request that she wear a tighter uniform because it looks better on video. The repeated questions about what she ate. The scale that appeared in the guest bathroom, and when Denise asked about it, Candace had smiled and said, "Oh, that's Clayton's. He's taking care of himself." Taking care. That's what they called it. Candace took a step, and from the sound of it Denise realized she was standing at the kitchen island, probably fussing with something as if life were normal. "I don't want her talking about self-esteem," Candace continued. "That creates debate. I want a simple story. Pain, shame, then relief, then gratitude. People love it when someone saves themselves." Clayton murmured agreement. "And the crew?" he asked. "Discreet." Candace's voice dropped even lower. "No warning. They arrive like it's maintenance. If she suspects anything, you play your part. You're good at that." Denise felt her face burn. It wasn't just fear. It was an old, familiar rage. The feeling of being evaluated without being asked. Of being inside someone else's plan like a carefully chosen object. And then Candace said the line that turned fear into urgency. "If she finds out, we destroy her reputation first." You know what people believe when a fat woman complains? They call it victimhood. They call it laziness. They call it anything. They just don't call it truth. Silence. A heavy, final kind of silence. The kind that belongs to people who already think they've won. Denise squeezed her eyes shut for a second as if that could erase what she'd heard. It didn't. She knew what it was like to live in a world that treated her body as proof of guilt. And here inside this house her body was a script. The footsteps moved away. The fridge opened. A glass clinked against the counter. The conversation sank into a whisper Denise couldn't make out anymore. But she didn't need more. When the kitchen finally returned to its fake quiet, Denise pushed the pantry door open just enough to look. The house was immaculate. Beautiful. Expensive. The kind of place that looks safe because it shines. Denise crossed the hallway like someone returning to existence in pieces. She felt her weight in her feet, felt air moving in and out of her lungs. She wanted to run, but her mind was working fast and cold like someone had flipped a switch. She had two choices: pretend she hadn't heard and become the character in there before, or act now, before her story was told by people who didn't know her name and didn't care to. Denise went to the small utility room where she kept her phone charging behind folded rags, because Candace didn't like devices out in the open. She picked it up and her hand trembled. Not from weakness. From choice. On the screen the clock read 11:47. Tomorrow morning. He thought about the cameras. Thought about the contracts. Thought about the way Clayton and Candace talked about her as if she were a marketing piece. A tool to sell someone else's morality. And Denise did what they never expect a fat woman to do when she realizes they're trying to shape her. She decided she wouldn't fit into their plan. She slipped her phone into her pocket, took a steady breath and went back into the kitchen with her face blank. The kind of neutrality women like her learn to wear to survive in places where any emotion can be used as evidence against them. When Clayton appeared in the doorway, immaculate in a light shirt and an expensive watch, he smiled as if nothing was happening. "Denise," he said, "the way you'd call a function." She answered politely, the same politeness they always mistake for submission. "Yes, sir." And while he talked about the day's schedule, anything really, Denise was already somewhere else inside. Mapping doors, times, routes, names. Because the truth was simple and now she'd heard it with her own ears. In that house they didn't want Denise to work. They wanted Denise to disappear inside a before. And that she would not allow. She tried to swallow but her throat locked, like the air itself had weight. Why are you warning me?" The woman in front of her didn't smile. Didn't make a speech. She just held Denise's gaze steady, like someone who'd seen that kind of cruelty up close for far too long. "Because I heard the plan," she said. "And because nobody deserves to be taken apart from the inside and then called inspiring." Outside the house kept living. Laughter by the pool. A toast. Music turned low. Normal life staged just inches from the door. Inside, Denise understood the danger wouldn't come with yelling. It would come with a sweet voice, a clean contract, a pretty word. By the third day the adrenaline hadn't gone away. It had just changed shape. She sat at the service kitchen table, hands wrapped around a chipped mug, and finally allowed her memory to line itself up. The recommendation that she eat separately. The new scale in the guest bathroom. The camera aimed down the hallway that led to her room. The repeated comment, always delivered with a laugh, "You're going to look amazing when..." And then the sentence that wasn't advice. It was an order, returned whole, exactly the way it had been said in the living room, like they were talking about a piece of furniture. "We filmed the before first. No makeup. No flattering angles." Then she signs. Denise closed her eyes for a second. Not from weakness. To keep herself from shaking. "I let too much slide," she murmured. "I called it work when it was already control." The other woman set a hand on her shoulder, not with pity but with grounding. "Trusting isn't a crime," she said. "But pretending you didn't see it now, that's what they're counting on." Denise rose slowly. And in that movement there was no promise to change her body, no plea to be accepted. There was only decision. "Then it's over," she said. "I'm not going to be anyone's before." She didn't wait for morning. She gathered the documents she'd managed to photograph, set aside a thumb drive, wrote down names and times, and slipped it all into an ordinary bag, like trash. Because to them that was what she was. Disposable until she became content. Denise swallowed hard and pulled out her phone like she was grabbing a life preserver. The name on the screen looked safe. Familiar. The right person on the list. Someone who had power and made problems disappear. She hit call. Hello. The voice on the other end came through clean, too professional. Hi. This is Denise Carter. I need. Holly's hand came out of nowhere and closed over the phone. Fast, tense, precise. She ended the call before Denise could finish the sentence. No, Holly said in a whisper that wasn't a request, it was a command. Not him. Denise blinked, thrown. But he knows the house, he knows Clayton. He can. Holly let out a short, humorless laugh like it hurt. He knows Clayton, yeah. And that's exactly why you don't call. Denise stared at the dark screen, and the truth landed in the most humiliating way. The place she'd been reaching for protection was the same place they bought silence. They didn't just build the campaign, Holly went on, staring forward like the walls had ears. They built the exits too. A chill crawled up the back of Denise's neck. It wasn't fear of getting jumped. It was fear of a story, of being turned into an official lie. Unstable employee, ungrateful, troublemaker, thief, attention-seeking. Holly held out her hand steady. Give me the phone. What for? Because it tracks you more than it protects you. Denise hesitated. That device was her link to the world, to the truth, to any chance of help. But it was also a leash. She handed it over. Holly didn't make it dramatic. She just popped the case open, pulled the SIM card out, snapped it in two and tossed it into a trash bag with a handful of paper towels and packaging scraps. Ordinary, dirty, untraceable. Then she powered the phone down, removed the battery, if it had one, or switched it to airplane mode, and shoved it inside an empty flour bag. Done, she said. Denise felt a tightness in her chest. You just erased me. Holly shook her head. No. I erased their map. She exhaled, counting silently, like she was thinking 3 moves ahead. Now if they're monitoring, the trail dies here. They'll think you gave up. That you went back to your room. That you accepted. Denise swallowed, her throat burning. So what are we now? Holly eased the door open, listening to the quiet of the house before stepping through. A rumor, she said. And rumors don't sign contracts. Denise pulled the hoodie over her head. The rough fabric scraped at her neck, and the discomfort was useful, real enough to keep her mind awake. In the car's rearview mirror, she barely recognized herself. She wasn't Denise from the Whitaker's house. She wasn't the efficient employee who vanished down hallways and only reappeared when everything was spotless. She was just a woman with eyes a little too alert, trying not to turn fear into noise. Holly drove like someone who'd had to disappear before. Hands steady on the wheel, quick checks in the mirror, breathing controlled. The kind of calm that isn't born from peace, it's born from practice. They were swallowed by dimmer streets, where streetlights flickered as if they were tired of promising safety. The air smelled like fryer grease, wet asphalt, and old dust. Denise kept her head down, not out of shame, but because she'd learned early that looking up in certain places can become an invitation to judgment. When the car stopped, the place looked too small to count as shelter. A simple house. Worn paint. A narrow yard. Nothing about it screamed safe. And yet, when Holly opened the door and they stepped inside, the interior felt like the opposite of the street. Clean, ordered, as if someone had fought hard to keep chaos from crossing the threshold. Get in quick, Holly whispered and locked the door with 2 sharp turns. Denise sat on the couch and felt her body demand payment. It wasn't poison fever. It was the delayed crash of adrenaline, the weight in her back, the raw throat from swallowing words. Her legs went soft, and for a second she hated her own vulnerability. Holly brought water, a thin blanket, and an old charger that didn't match anything in the room. There's no luxury here, she said, almost apologizing. Denise shook her head, still breathing hard. Luxury was never safety, she answered, and the certainty in her voice startled them both. Back at the mansion there had been marble, cameras, smiles. And still they'd been trying to turn her into a product, a video that would step on her dignity to sell relief to other people. Here, with a rattling fan and thin walls, there was at least one thing the mansion never offered. Time. Pause. A few minutes to think. But danger doesn't sleep just because the door is locked. Outside, the street kept its own noises. A dog barking blocks away, a motorcycle running too fast, the sharp close of a car door. And worse than the sound came the feeling. Eyes. Through a slit in the curtain, Denise saw a neighbor standing on her porch, arms folded, eyes fixed on a car she didn't recognize. The next day the woman came back. Pretended to sweep but swept too slowly. The kind of curiosity that collects secrets like coins. Holly noticed too. Denise saw it in the way she turned the lights off early, spoke less, and started stepping lightly so the floor wouldn't creak. "She's not a bad person," Holly murmured, fastening the curtain so not even a hint of movement showed. But curiosity, in the wrong house, turns into a weapon. Denise's stomach rolled. It wasn't only her at risk now. It was Holly. It was anyone who crossed their path and became an accidental witness. "I should leave," Denise said, and the words tasted like guilt. Holly shook her head without arguing. "Not yet. If you go out now they'll drag you back and make it look like it was your choice." Denise closed her eyes for a second just to line up her next move. There was a war happening there, but it wasn't fought with shouting. It was fought with silence. With measured steps. With evidence kept in the right place. When the time finally came to go out, just enough to buy basics and test whether they were being followed, it didn't feel like freedom. It felt like stepping into a spotlight. Holly adjusted Denise's hood and spoke low. "Eyes down. Stay close. And if someone says your name, you don't turn." Denise nodded, and inside she repeated a phrase that wasn't a prayer. It was strategy. Today they weren't running forever. They were buying time to tell the truth the right way, to the right person, before Clayton and Candace rewrote everything. To keep the consultant off-screen for now, Denise discovers, through a printed email, a notification on a tablet Holly grabbed from the house, or an overheard phone call, that the crew arrives tomorrow, but the consultant still doesn't appear, only the threat of the calendar. That night at Holly's house, Denise didn't sleep. She lay on the couch with her hood still on, listening to the house breathe, pipes settling, the fan rattling, the occasional creak of wood that sounded like footsteps until she forced herself to count it out. Fear kept trying to turn every noise into a warning. But Denise had learned something about fear. If you let it stay shapeless, it owns you. So she gave it a shape. At the small kitchen table, under the yellow light of a single bulb, Denise spread out what she had. Prints she'd made from photos, timestamps written in tight block letters. A list of names Holly remembered from the Whitakers' maintenance schedule. Not guesses. Not feelings. Paper. Holly watched the windows more than she watched Denise, curtain pinned between her fingers like it was holding back the world. "They're coming tomorrow," Holly whispered. "The crew." "That consultant." Candace said it like it was Christmas. Denise nodded once. "Then tonight is the only night we still get to choose the order of the story." Holly swallowed. "What do we do?" Denise reached into the grocery bag she'd packed like trash and pulled out the thumb drive. No label. Nothing that looked important. The kind of object that only matters when it's too late to take it back. "We don't fight them in the house," Denise said. "We fight them where witnesses live." Holly's eyes flicked to her, sharp. "Where?" Denise hesitated for half a heartbeat, because saying it out loud made it real. "At the charity event," she said. "The one Clayton loves. The one where he gets to look like a savior." Holly's face tightened. "He'll have security." "He'll have an audience," Denise corrected. "That's the difference." Denise pulled out an old prepaid phone. Cheap plastic, no personal accounts, no familiar numbers tied to her name. She typed slowly, double-checking every letter, every digit. A Houston News tip line. She kept the message simple, because simple travels faster than emotion. Tip: charity event tomorrow night, Whitaker Foundation. Employer and spouse planning to film housekeeper as before content without informed consent and pressure her into image rights contract after exposure. I have internal schedule plus language targets plus proof of intent. Need reporter plus camera. I can meet off-site. Source at risk. She hit send. A reply came. Houston desk. Can you prove it? Where can we meet? Denise typed back. Proof in person. One thumb drive plus screenshots plus timeline. Meet at 10:30 a.m. at a public place. Daylight. Cameras. No private locations. Holly's voice cracked. You trust them? Denise didn't look up. I don't trust. I verify. In the morning they moved like people who knew the clock was hunting them. No dramatic goodbyes. Just essentials. The drive, paper copies sealed in plastic, a second backup tucked where panic wouldn't erase it. They met the Houston journalist at a crowded coffee shop near the highway. Bright windows, too many people for anyone to drag someone out unnoticed. The reporter didn't arrive alone. She came with a cameraman and the posture of someone who knows the difference between a sob story and a case. Denise set the thumb drive on the table like a chess piece. No before and after, Denise said immediately. No humiliation. No spin. I'm not here to be a lesson. The reporter held her gaze. Then what are you here for? Denise's voice didn't shake. For the truth. And for consent to mean something. Denise played a short audio clip. Candance's voice unmistakable. We filmed the before, first. Then she signs. The journalist's expression didn't change much. But her focus sharpened. My newsroom got me a press credential for the Whitaker Foundation event, she said. We'll be inside. Before they parted, the journalist slid a business card across the table. Tonight, she said. We'll be there. Because now the story didn't live only in Denise's body. It lived in other hands. Warm lights, low music, easy laughter. Well-dressed people moving as if every greeting were a social currency. In Texas, Clayton knew exactly how nights like this worked. A beautiful hall, a charity speech, a worthy cause, and behind it all, deals being made without anyone calling them deals. Denise walked in with her hood low and her posture neutral. Beside her, Holly looked smaller than usual, like she was trying to fit between people without touching anyone. But Denise knew the truth. In that room, invisibility wasn't protection. It was a trap. She wasn't there to be seen as a before. She was there to be heard as a person. Near the corner of the ballroom, by a corridor where the noise thinned, Candance appeared with her perfect smile, the same smile that turned cruelty into concern. Beside her, Clayton greeted guests with a firm handshake and a practiced voice. And then Candance's gaze landed on Denise. The smile didn't vanish. It just hardened. Candance crossed the space with controlled speed, like someone who didn't want attention but did want dominance. When she reached Denise, her hand closed around Denise's arm with enough force to look like affection from a distance and feel like aggression up close. You're making a scene, Candance whispered, the words loaded with threat. You have no idea who you're messing with. Holly took an instinctive step forward. Candance turned her head toward her, eyes narrowing. And you, she said low. You're going to lose everything. For a second, Denise felt the old reflex trying to rise. The urge to apologize for existing. The trained habit of swallowing humiliation and calling it work. But something had changed since the pantry. Since Holly's house. Since the moment Denise understood they were trying to steal her story and sell it back to her as redemption. She didn't yank her arm away in panic. She freed herself with intention. And she spoke in a tone that didn't compete with the music. It competed with control. I'm not making a scene. I'm stopping a crime. Candance let out a short laugh, trying to turn it into a joke. A crime? Denise, please. Clayton stepped closer, drawn in by the risk to his image. His smile arrived on time. So did the paternal tone. Denise, he said like she was a mistake he could correct with kindness. Let's talk in private. Denise looked at him without lowering her head. You wanted to film me first, she said clear. And make me sign afterward. A small pause followed, almost invisible. But anyone close enough could feel it. Clayton didn't ask what she meant. He did what powerful people do when the mask slips. He tried to get the script back. This is a misunderstanding, he said, reaching out as if he were about to touch her shoulder. "You're stressed." Before his hand could make contact, a voice cut in, firm, professional, loud enough to slice through the corridor. "Actually, she's being very coherent." A woman wearing a press badge approached with quick, purposeful steps. She wasn't an influencer. She was a reporter. And she wasn't alone. A cameraman already had his camera up, framing faces, catching the microsecond when Clayton's composure faltered. "My name is Rachel Navarro, Houston," the journalist said, flashing her badge. "I received documents, audio recordings, and a production schedule indicating that you plan to film an employee without informed consent, in order to pressure her into signing an image rights contract afterward. And I'm not guessing," Rachel added, voice steady. "In your own audio, Candace says, 'We filmed the before first.' Then she signs." The ballroom didn't fall completely silent. It took on that specific sound a party makes when it realizes it has become news. People holding their breath. People raising phones. People stepping back to avoid being in frame but staying close enough not to miss it. Candace opened her mouth to smile and deny it. But Rachel continued, giving her no room. On top of that, there is an internal document with performance targets describing the employee as the before and establishing humiliating language to maximize engagement. Denise didn't have to shout. She didn't have to prove anything with her body right there. The evidence had already been delivered. And the best part, the cruelest part for Candace and Clayton, was that they couldn't pull it back because it wasn't only in Denise's hands anymore. It was with the press. It was backed up. It was in front of witnesses. Clayton tried to step closer to the cameraman. "This is defamation. You can't." Rachel lifted a hand like someone who'd heard better threats. "Who decides that won't be you here in this hallway?" she replied. "And for the record, I've already sent copies to my newsroom and to attorneys." Candace finally lost the shine in her smile. She stared at Denise like Denise had broken an unwritten rule. The rule that an employee doesn't become an author. "You're ruining my life," Candace hissed. Denise took a breath and answered with the sentence that closed the before story for good. "You tried to sell mine." At the entrance of the ballroom, someone from the organizers called for security. Security arrived late and confused, and this time it wasn't house security. It was event security, seeing press, cameras, witnesses. They couldn't simply drag Denise out and label it a meltdown. Not without consequences. The corridor filled with voices. And in the middle of them, Denise realized what they'd always said she would never have: space. She turned her face toward the camera and spoke just a little, exactly the right way, like someone who isn't asking permission to exist. "I'm not here to be turned into a lesson. I'm here because my body is not marketing currency. And because consent under pressure is not consent." Beside her, Holly was trembling. But she didn't step back. Rachel didn't ask Denise to cry. Didn't ask for before and after. Didn't ask for humiliation. She asked for names, dates, and context. And the party, built to celebrate a beautiful cause, ended with the kind of truth that doesn't fit inside a slogan. The corridor was still packed with voices, but Denise wasn't inside the chaos anymore. She was outside it. The Houston journalist spoke calmly, tapping her badge, repeating names and dates like she was driving stakes into the ground so no one could shove the story back into the dark. The cameraman kept the shot steady. And all around them, phones recorded from every angle. Too many witnesses for any official version to swallow. Clayton tried to take back control with the kind of words powerful people use. Candace tried to take it back with charm. Neither of them succeeded. Denise didn't raise her voice. She didn't apologize. She didn't give a speech meant to soften people who'd never intended to respect her in the first place. She only said what was necessary. "I'm nobody's before," Denise said, and the sentence hit the corridor like a door slamming shut. "And if you needed to humiliate me to sell hope, then your hope was always cruelty." Holly stayed beside her, shaking but steady. Denise held her hand without looking, not to lean on her, but to remember she wasn't alone. Holly held on. Across the way, Rachel gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "I've got you." It was all they needed. Denise guided Holly gently, and the two of them walked away from the cameras. Not because they were ashamed, but because they didn't owe the spectacle anything. At the ballroom doors, the night air hit Denise's face like cold water. The parking lot had too much light and too much silence, but for the first time in days that silence didn't feel like a threat. It felt like choice. In the car, Holly let out a breath she'd been holding as if her body only allowed it now. Did we do it? Denise stared ahead, hands steady in her lap. No, she answered without drama. We started. And as the car pulled out of the lot, Denise didn't look back. Because what they were leaving behind wasn't just a rich house. It was a script someone tried to write with her body. And this time the one telling the story was her. If this story hit somewhere personal, comment below. When was the moment you realized someone was trying to decide for you? Subscribe, because the next story might be the one that gives you back a piece of yourself the world tried to take.